So what we'll talk about today is about mufflers. So we have talked a lot of different applications of sound. We have talked about speakers, microphones. We have also seen how shakers work, accelerometers, which use principles which are similar to what is used in acoustics.
Seismometer.
And
The seismometer.
Seismometers. We have also seen how sound moves in architectural spaces. So mufflers is another thing I wanted to talk about. And to understand mufflers, we have to understand how sound propagates as it moves through three different media. So what we'll do is we'll initially see how sound moves through three different media, and then we'll use those principles in context of mufflers and see how mufflers work. What you can have is you have sound, and this is medium 1, medium 2, medium 3. These could be physically separated boundaries, or you could have three different units where properties of the material are significantly different. So let's say Z0 is rho 1 C1 first medium, rho 2 C2 in the second, and rho 3 C3 in the third. Now we know that as sound moves from one medium to the other medium, there is some reflection, right? So let's say the incident wave is A1 E j omega t minus K1x, and then when it hits the first boundary, it gets reflected, and the reflection is there should be B1 E j omega t minus K1x.
Plus K1x.
Plus, sorry. Similarly, here, now when it moves to second medium and it hits the second boundary, let's say that the incident wave is A2 E j omega t minus K2x, and it gets reflected, part of it. So what you get is B2 E j omega t plus K2x. Okay, and finally the final wave which emanates from the third into the third medium is A3 E j omega t minus K3x. K1, K2, what are K1, K2, K3?
Omega by C1, omega.
So this is omega over C1, omega over C2, omega over C3. Now think about it. As this wave hits the first boundary, what is the boundary condition at that point?
The velocity at that point. Velocity at that point, whether you consider boundary 1 or boundary 2, is the same.
Velocity just inside the boundary and just outside the boundary is the same. So velocity is continuous. Velocity is continuous across the boundary. What else?
And displacement.
Displacement?
Amplitude.
That will be a consequence of velocity itself. But pressure will also be continuous across the boundary. And why will pressure be constant? Because if pressure is jumpy, so this is my boundary, and just inside you have PA, and just here you have PB, or P1 and P2. And if that film is extremely thin, which of size, thickness is, it's vanishingly thin, so the mass of it is 0, but you have across a film of 0 thickness a non-zero pressure difference, then what that means is that it will have infinite acceleration. But in reality it doesn't happen. So pressure is continuous. So we use these two boundary conditions and get several equations, and from those equations we compute A1, A2, A1 we already know, whatever is the incident wave. At the end of the day, what we are trying to find is what is the value of A3, right? We know A1, we have, what we do not know is B1, B2, A2 and A3, 4 unknowns. So from these two boundary conditions, if we can generate 4 equations, then we should be able to compute all these unknowns, B1, A2, B2 and A3. For the pressure boundary condition, what you have is A1 plus B1 at x equals 0. Okay, so here x equals 0 and here I am saying x equals L. So at x equals 0, my boundary condition is A1 plus B1 equals A2 plus B2, and at x equals L I get, yeah, A2, I just put x equals L in these expressions, and what I get is A2 E minus J K L A2L plus B2 E, and here I will have a positive J K2L equals A3 exponent minus J K3L, right? So this is my pressure boundary. And for velocity, what I get is A1 over rho 1 C1 minus B1 over rho 1 C1 equals A2 over rho 2 C2 minus B2 over rho 2 C2 at x equals 0. And then the other boundary condition at x equals L is A2 exponent minus J K2L over rho 2 C2 minus B2 E J K2L over rho 2 C2 equals the velocity on the other side of the layer, rho 3 C3 E minus J K3L. So I have 4 equations, 1, 2, 3 and 4. And using these 4 equations, I can compute all the unknowns in terms of A1. So what we are interested in understanding is that how much power is transmitted and how much power is lost as sound moves through this media. So we will define a ratio T, and T is power transmission coefficient. And what is power transmission coefficient? It's a ratio of A3 square divided by 2 rho 3 C3 over whatever is coming in 2 rho 1 C1, right? So if I use all these equations and I find A3 in terms of A1, at the end of the day what I get is transmission coefficient of power is for a number R13 divided by R13 plus 1 entire thing squared, R23 minus 1 square minus R13 this entire thing divided by R13 plus 1 whole square times sine square of A2L. So how did I get this equation? By solving A3 in terms of A1 and plugging those values in this equation 3. Okay? And these R's are ratios essentially. R13 is rho 3 C3 over rho 1 C1. R23 is rho 3 C3 over rho 2 C2, and R12 equals rho 2 C2 over rho 1 C1. So I know the properties of the medium, so I can find these ratios, I can plug them in this relation, and I know how much power is getting transmitted through the medium and how much is getting lost. So now what we'll do is we'll do some two special cases, and then the third special case will be of a muffler. Special case is, first special case is that what happens when this L vanishes and becomes 0. L equals 0. Once that happens, then T equals what we call T0, and that is essentially 4 R13 over R13 plus the entire thing is squared. This value of T for now, if R13 equals 0, then T is 0, and also if R13 equals infinite, then T is again 0. This is the case when you have perfect relief of pressure. So as sound is moving from first medium to the third medium, because second medium is just not there, then the pressure just gets perfectly relieved. Then R13 is 0. This is the case when you have perfect rigid termination. So you have a wall and it is infinitely rigid, it just does not move, then nothing gets transmitted. That's another one. And if I plot this, I plot it against R13, this is my T, then my curve looks something like this, and this is T max, and this is 1. For R13 equals 1, I get maximum value of T max, and I can find that also analytically by doing this dER1 is equal to 0, which gives me, if I differentiate T with respect to R13, what I get is 4 over R13 plus 1 whole square minus 8 R13 over R13 plus 1 cube, yeah, equals 0. So if I solve it, what I get is, for extrema condition, R13 equals 1. A good, so bear in mind, this is the definition of R13. It's rho 3 over C3 divided by rho over C1. Suppose you have an acoustic transducer, and let's say it is underwater, and it's generating sound, and that sound has to be transmitted, let's say, in water. But also because of the fact that it is immersed in water, you want to protect it from leakage of moisture into the system. Electrical circuit has to be protected. Salt is there, so it has to be protected in a mechanical sense, so that there is no corrosion and all that. If you apply some sort of a layer on top of it, there will be loss of transmission. If you want to maximize the loss of transmission, you want to minimize that transmission loss, the property of the material has to be such chosen that R13 equals 1. So there are special rubbers for which they have actually tuned the material properties of that particular rubber to seawater, and they are called rho C rubbers. So for those specific materials, if they use it to encapsulate the whole transducer, the impedance is perfectly matched and there is no transmission loss. So you get TL because your R13 is 1. So that was the first case. Case 2. Case 2 could be where the middle medium number 2, is of a thickness which is very small. It's not very thick. So in that case, sine K2L is extremely less than 1, which means I can approximate sine K2L as approximately equal to K2L. And this condition is valid only when L is very small compared to
Lambda over 2 pi.
lambda over 2 pi. And lambda is the wavelength of the sound where?
In
Two.
middle
Huh?
into second.
In the second medium. So in medium 2. So if that is the case, now we take a special case where rho 1 C1 equals rho 3 C3 equals, so such that R13 equals 1. So this is a special case of case 2. So then my T becomes 1 minus R23 minus 1 R12 minus 1 over 4 K2L square, and this entire thing is inverted. Now we know that R21 is very small compared to 1, and for the same reason R12 is very large compared to 1. So my transmission factor is 1 over 1 minus R12 square times minus 1 times K2L square over 4, and this becomes 1 over 1 plus R12 square K2L square over 4. So now if I put K2 as omega over C2, then what I get is T equals 1 over 1 plus rho 2 C2 square over 4 rho 1 C1 square times omega square L square over C2 square, and that upon simplification I get is 1 plus rho 2 L square omega square over 4 rho 1 C1, everything is squared. Now what is physically rho 2L? See, I have a medium which is very thin. It has a density rho 2, it has a length L. So physically what does it mean? Mass,
Rho 2L.
Mass per
Mass
unit area.
length.
mass per unit area,
Area.
right? So rho 2L is mass per unit area, and I call that uppercase M. So this is basically 1 plus M square omega square over 4 rho 1 C1 square. Now on this one, if I do a transmission loss, this is the power transmitted. So if I want to compute transmission loss, which I call TL, and if I want to do that in decibel scale, then that will be 10 logarithm on base 10 I incident over I reference minus 10 log I transmitted over I ref, and then this essentially becomes 10 log of 10 log in base 10 I incident over I ref. So this is basically inverse of T. So my transmission loss is basically 10 log 10 over 1 plus M omega over 2 rho 1 C1, then that thing is squared. This relation, a lot of people call it limb mass relation or law. It's called limb mass law, the limb mass relation. And why it is called limb is because you are not assuming any stiffness. Suppose you have sound and there's a thin wall in between. You have room 1, big room, then you have a thin wall, and then you have another big room. What you are not assuming is what you are not factoring in is the stiffness of the wall. So that's why it's called limb mass law. And typically if I plot this law against logarithm of frequency or omega, and here I am plotting in decibels transmission loss, then I get some sort of a straight line. Okay, so this is limb mass law. Now in reality, the structure does something like this, which I am going to plot it in green. Something like this. These peaks are related to the resonance modes of the wall itself. So whenever you have a resonance, you lose a little bit more energy. So it just happens that the shape of the wall is out of phase with the pressure wave. So you lose a little bit more of energy. And this is a place which is called, at this point for this frequency is called coincidence frequency. Coincidence frequency. And what is this frequency? Physically what it means is that when the frequency in the air matches the frequency of the bending waves in the wall, then you have this thing called coincidence frequency. So rather than going into math, at this you have a dip in transmission loss. But otherwise this limb mass law is a fairly good estimate of how much energy gets transmitted or lost through the medium. So with this background, now we'll move to another case of mufflers.
So what is the definition of the coincidence frequency too?
That coincidence frequency is when the bending flexural waves of the wall coincide with the incident frequency. That is the frequency of the sound. So now we'll talk about mufflers. So in a very broad sense, you have two types of mufflers. First type are reactive and the other type are dissipative. In dissipative type of mufflers, the reliance in terms of reducing the noise coming out of engine or whatever is the system is reliance is on the dissipative characteristics of the materials inside the muffler. So that's why it's called dissipative. And here it is primarily how you are tuning, and the bigger reliance is how to cancel pressure waves inside the muffler so that the total noise emitted out is minimized. In reality, mufflers are a hybrid. They rely on both reactive plus dissipation traits. So they are a mix of these two. So within reactive, what we will today talk about is a particular type of muffler which is called expansion type muffler. And in general, the construction is something like this. So you have air coming in from engine. Of course, it goes through some catalytic converter where all the poisonous gases are catalyzed and emissions are made safe. So it comes from a pipe, then you have an expansion chamber, which is this. And then it gets emitted out through another tube, a short tube. Let's say the cross-sectional area of the inlet tube is A1, and we also assume outlet tube is still A1, and the middle tube is A2, such that A2 over A1 equals M, the ratio M. So this is a three medium problem. You have the first medium where the cross-sectional area is A1, then you have A2, and then you have another one A1. We cannot idealize this directly as a lumped volume, because in case of a lumped volume, what is the property of sound? Velocities are zero in that. Here velocities are not zero. We cannot also idealize it as lumped mass, because in lumped mass it moves in a rigid way. Air moves in a rigid way. It's not happening here. So the pressure gradient in the lumped mass is negligible. It's not the case here. So we use the three medium approach which we talked about just now and understand this problem. From the earlier discussion, we know that transmission coefficient is 4R13 over R13 plus 1 whole square 1 minus R23 plus 1 minus 1 R12 minus 1 square over R13 plus 1 whole square sine square K2L. And I should mention that this distance is L, length of the expansion chamber. Now what we'll do is we'll compute what are the different values of R13, R23, R12. So R13 equals 1. Also we know that rho 2 A2 equals rho 1 A1 because of conservation of mass. So that gives me rho 2 equals rho 1 over m. Similarly, rho 3 equals rho 2 times m. I also want to find how our C is behaving, C, velocity of sound, behaving in each of these chambers. So we know that P1 V1 equals P2 V2, which gives me P2 equals P1 V1 over V2 equals P1 over m, and similarly P3 equals P2 times m. Now velocity of sound is what? Gamma. Gamma does not change. P over rho.
So why have you considered isothermal process?
We have to understand this. The flow of the air may have a different nature compared to flow of the sound. Air may be going through a different process, but as sound is propagating into it, it is going through adiabatic. Air is essentially going through this, absorbing this. So we are valid in making using one set of rules for air and another set of rules for sound itself.
No, but sir, as sound is traveling in air only.
Sound travels in air, but just because air is moving like that, sound does not travel with air. In the first lecture, what we had seen is that the motion of particles is not same as like you drop a stone in a wave. The wave travels, but in that case, the lake is still sitting at one place.
Yes, sir.
Right. So with using a similar thought process, we are using similar thought process.
Sir, why are we considering the travel of air?
Because we have to find pressure. These are not, so in these P1, P2 and P3, they are basically average pressures, bulk pressures in each of these chambers, first chamber, second. Around these mean values of pressure, there are fluctuations in the pressure because of sound. But even if sound is not traveling through this whole expansion chamber, still P1, P2, P3 will hold. C is gamma P over rho. So if I use this relation in conjunction with 3 and 4, what I get is R13 equals 1, R23 equals m, R12 equals 1 over m. So now I put these values of R's in first relation, which is the relation for transmission factor, and what I get is T equals 4 divided by 4, 1 minus m square minus 1, 1 over m square minus 1 over 4 sine square K2L, and then what I get is 1 minus m square minus 1 minus m square divided by 4 m square sine square K2L. I can sort this out as 1 over 1 plus square minus 1 whole square over 4m square sine square K2L, and then I further modify it as 1 plus m minus 1 over n square divided by 4 sine square K2L, and K2 is again omega over C2, and what we found is that C2 is same as C1 as same as C3, so it is essentially omega over C. So if I use this particular relation and then find transmission loss in decibels, then my relation for transmission loss is 10 log to the base 10 1 plus m minus 1 over m whole square divided by 4 times sine square K2L. So in cars, what is the typical RPM at which the engine moves? It's around 1500. Start, most of the times it's at around 1500. So the range is 1500 RPM to 4000, let's say RPM. That is 25 Hertz to 67 Hertz. So if I have to maximize TL, I have to improve this factor m minus 1 over m. I can make it as high as possible, and I also have to make sine square K2L maximum. And the maximum value it can assume is 1 for 25 Hertz. So L is basically C over 2 pi times 1 over F. I have to make K2L equal to 90 degrees basically. So if I get this, then this is there. So that translates to L equals 1.37 meters for 40 Hertz, and it is 82 centimeters for 67 Hertz. So if I know what frequency I am trying to minimize, then based on that I have to choose the right value of L. That's what I am trying to do. Couple of other things. As M goes up, so does TL. So if you have a bigger expansion chamber, which has a much bigger area compared to A1 over A1, if I maximize it, my transmission loss will be maximized. And the other thing we have already mentioned is that if K2L equals pi over 2, then again this is the condition for maximizing. Condition for maximizing. What I will do is I will show you a few slides. So this is one picture I pulled from internet. That's the source, noatomuffler.net. And what you are seeing here is from the engine you have a pipe, then it goes through a yellow box, which is what they call a catalytic converter, where they reduce the poisonous content of the gases through some catalytic process. And then you have a long pipe, and then that's your muffler. This is another one. So in the analysis which we did, that muffler is tuned to a particular frequency, right? So as I shift from that frequency, slowly the transmission loss will not be as great as I would like it to be. If I am very far away and once sine K2L equals 0, then that whole purpose is lost. So in this figure, which I pulled from this Acoustics for Engineers book, you have the upper picture, A, 14.10A. You have a series of chambers, and each chamber is tuned for a particular frequency. So you can tune it accordingly. Now this is the picture of two types of mufflers where the reliance is not that much on expansion or reactive mufflers, but these are dissipative ones. So you have lining inside the tube which absorb sound, and in the second one what you have is surrogated. So the absorption area in the expansion chamber gets enlarged, and that enlarged area surface is coated with absorptive material, so that absorbs sound. So your B is like a hybrid. You have an expansion chamber and also absorptive dividers are there. This is probably the last one. So what this picture shows is that how my transmission loss changes as KL changes. So KL starts from 0, goes up to pi, and then for different values of M, I keep on increasing my transmission losses as my M becomes higher and higher. And again at 90 degrees for a given value of M, my transmission loss is maximum. Last one. So one limitation of these reactive mufflers is that they generate a back pressure, and what that does is that it has an impact on the engine's efficiency. If you have a very high back pressure, then the engine efficiency goes. So in a lot of cars which are used on racetracks, where they don't care that much about noise pollution but are more worried about speed, they tend not to use so much of reactive type of mufflers. Rather, they tend to have more reliance on absorption as the muffling agent. So this is a particular type of a muffler, and the name is called cherry bomb. I do not know why they call it cherry bomb muffler, but where you have is an inner pipe which has a lot of holes in it, and that is covered with a thick sound insulating layer, which is basically glass, wool and other absorptive materials, and then outside of that you have this red sheet which is basically made of steel. So this is another one. So what we will do is now we will go back and do a little bit more about mufflers. So we have talked about reactive type of mufflers, and if we want to understand how absorption plays a role in terms of absorbing sound, then we already have the necessary background based on previous class lectures, how to figure out how much sound is absorbed through the walls in a muffler, right? Because if we know the alpha absorption coefficient of the materials, and if we know S, then we can figure out how much sound is getting absorbed. So what Sabine had done was he developed this relation. A is attenuation, is 12.6 alpha 1.4 E over S, and this is attenuation in decibels per feet. Alpha is again absorption, sound absorption coefficient. P is not pressure. P is here perimeter of lined duct. Okay, and this is in inches, so you can convert it into meters. And then S equals cross section area of duct, so it is an inch square. So it's trivial to figure out how to reframe this particular relation in SI units. So what we'll do is we'll do an example. So let's say I have a long pipe. After it comes out of the catalytic converter, then I have an expansion box or expansion chamber, and then sound gets out. I was looking at some of our cars, and one car I found had a length of about 2 meters, this one 6 feet, and the diameter of this was about 3 inches, and this diameter was about 12 inches, and again this diameter is again 3 inches. This length was about a meter, so I can convert it into. So M is what for this?
12 square by 3 square.
Yeah, 16, right? M is 16. PL equals 10 log 10, 1 plus 16 minus 1 over 16 square over 4 sine square K2L, and that is, in this box I have is 1 plus 63.5 sine square F over 55. So I did the math, and in terms of frequency what this comes out. So now I will construct a matrix. So frequency could be 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90 and 100 hertz. So in terms of engine RPM, because this is something we see on the screen on the dashboard, is 2400, 3000, 3600, 4200, 4800, 54, and this is 6000. Transmission loss in decibels I calculated is 14.6, 16.1, 17.1, 10.7, 18, 18.1, 17.8. So it starts going after 80-90 hertz. Now if I want to see how much less noisy it becomes in terms of what is the reduction in pressure, so I say pressure reduction factor. So in this case it goes down by a factor of 5.4, 6.4. What will be the value for 18 dB? 8. 6 dB is twice. 7.1, 7.7, 8, 7.8. So you get significant reduction in pressure based on this. So now if you below the car, if you have more space, then you can make the value of M larger. Or you don't necessarily have to make it round. It could be a rectangular shape wherever you have more space, so that your cross-sectional area is larger. M is basically cross-sectional area, ratio of cross-sectional areas. So if I want further reduction in sound, I can increase my M. And I can also check, see where my maximum noise is coming from, what frequency. And based on that, I can change the value of L. Right. So I am getting 14 to 18 dBs of transmission loss. So then I said, okay, for comparison purposes, let's say that if I line this entire tube with some sort of a highly acoustic damping material, what kind of an impact it has. So in that case, A equals 12.6 times, and I assumed alpha of 0.08, which is fairly high, times pi d is the perimeter, pi d square over 4 is my area. So if I do the math, what I get is 0.49 dB per feet. So this is roughly 6 feet. So total absorption attenuation will be of how much? 3 dB attenuation. So over 6 feet there will be 3 dB attenuation by absorption. So the point being that absorptive mufflers are not that efficient. Their response is much wider in terms of frequency band. But they are not broadband, but they absorb, their absorptive capacity is not as great as compared to reactive mufflers. So most of the reliance when you are trying to reduce the noise coming from engine is on reactive nature of the system. So that's what I wanted to cover in the context of mufflers. So that's another application we cover. Now today in another 15-20 minutes and in the next lecture we'll talk a little bit about how noise gets generated and some very broad approaches to which noise is managed. Of course, one way is through mufflers, but I wanted to cover it in a more philosophical way, how noise is managed. And noise can come through several sources. There could be sources, there's some noise happening outside the room, I don't want it to get inside the room. There's noise from the fan, noise from the ducts, noise from electronic equipment. But even units which are supposed to make good sound, they also generate noise. For instance, if you have a loudspeaker and I send it a pulse of 40 hertz, it will not be always the case that it will only generate 40 hertz content. It will also generate its noise. and most of that type of noise comes through nonlinearity in the system. So by a very simple example, we'll today see how nonlinearity generates noise content. And for that, we'll have just a simple spring mass system. So mass is m, this is k, and this is f naught est. And if k is linear, then the relationship between f and x will be linear. But if k is non-linear, then there will be noise generated. So let's say k equals k naught plus k1 x cube, no, x square. This very simple model has direct application in transducer. So you have force which is being generated by which part of the loudspeaker? The voice coil. That is generating force on the membrane. So that is your F naught est. Then there is moving mass of the loudspeaker, which is m. And then there is stiffness. I have eliminated damping here for simplicity purposes. And there is stiffness. Now if that stiffness is non-linear, as in this case, then what I am trying to understand is that if I excite it by a frequency s, what happens to x? If x has only s frequency content, then there is no noise. But if it has something in addition, then there is noise. So the equation of motion is what? Mx double dot plus k, where k is a function of x times x. So we say that we assume a solution for x, x1 est plus x2 e2 st plus x3 e3 st. So we can take an infinite series and we plug this equation in the equation of motion. So my equation of motion becomes F naught est equals, and then I am going to collect different terms. So mass times x1 s square est plus x2 s square e2 st plus x3 e, I'm sorry,
4x2
s square, huh?
2s square 3s square
2 st
4x2s square e2 st plus 9.
mass times acceleration.
Yeah.
So when I difference, you are saying here it should be 4 st?
4x2.
4 into x2. Coefficient of x2.
Yeah. And 9
Yes, sir.
e3 st. So that is mass plus k naught x1 est plus x2 e2 st plus x3 e3 st plus there is an infinite number of terms here plus k1 x1 cube e3 st plus x2 cube e what? 6, right? 6 st plus x3 cube e 9 st plus, and then there will be cross coupling terms. So 3 x1 square x2 e4 st plus 3 x1 square x3
Compare the equation.
e5 st plus 3 x1 square x4 e6 st. So I get an infinite number of terms here. So if this equation has to hold true, then all the terms associated with est, when I take their coefficients, they have to vanish. They have to become 0. All the terms associated with e2st, their coefficients, collectively they have to vanish, and so on and so forth. So that's what we'll do. So once we rearrange, we collect terms in terms of est, ms square plus k naught minus f naught, then e2st 4 ms square plus k naught x2 plus e3st 9 ms square plus k naught x3 plus k1 x1 cube plus e4st 16 ms square plus k naught x4 plus, right. So from this guy I write my first relation that, oh, there has to be an x1 here in the first one, x1. So x1 equals f naught over k naught plus ms square. What is x2?
0.
x2 is 0. x3 is minus k1 x1 cube over k naught plus 9 ms square. x4?
0.
So
Odd signal.
So what you are seeing is that
Then
just because you had one cubic term in the stiffness, you are generating infinite number of extra frequencies for x, and that is all noise. So this, all the terms associated with x2, x3, x4, they are all noise. So in reality, the system is not only linear in the sense that it's dependent on x square, but it's also dependent on x cube, x, and all powers of x. Stiffness by itself is dependent only on cubic, so the dependence of stiffness on x is only at 0th order, square, 4th term, 6th term, and so on and so forth. But there are other terms, damping, that has other dependencies. Then there's also dependence on frequency, properties of the material change with frequency. So things are not very nice and linear. And once they are not nice and linear, then you get second order, third order, fourth order, fifth order, and so on and so forth, harmonics. As long as your displacements are small, the magnitude of these harmonics is small compared to the base tone, to the input tone. But if your displacements are large, for instance, if x is large, then k1 also starts becoming important. And once that happens, then noise gets generated by the system also. So non-linearity is a very big source of noise in systems. So as we are engineering systems, and if we want to manage noise, then one important consideration has to be that our system has to be more or less linear in the operating range. That's all I talk.